The Galactic Council's war room buzzed with the usual arrogance that had defined their military for 3 centuries. General Vortex, a towering Krillian with metallic scales and 4 arms, gestured dismissively at the holographic display showing Earth's defensive positions. These humans think they can challenge the might of the Galactic Alliance with what they call snipers? His voice boomed through the crystalline chamber, causing several smaller species to flinch. Our intelligence reports show they position single soldiers kilometers away from battle zones, armed with primitive projectile weapons. Admiral Zephyra, her blue-tinted skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns of amusement, added her own mockery. On Zirion Prime, our warriors charge into battle with plasma cannons and energy shields. These Earth creatures hide behind rocks and bushes like frightened prey animals. The holographic Earth rotated slowly before them, its blue and green surface seeming almost quaint compared to the fortress worlds they had conquered. The planet had been marked for integration into the Galactic Alliance, which was diplomatic speak for complete subjugation. Humanity had refused the ultimatum to surrender, and now the galaxy's most powerful military force was preparing to teach them the price of defiance. Commander Nexus, a reptilian saurid whose species had been among the first to join the Alliance through conquest, pulled up tactical data on his wrist display. Our preliminary scouts report that human military doctrine is laughably outdated. They still use chemical propellants for their weapons, while we have mastered energy manipulation for warfare. Their so-called special forces spend years learning to shoot accurately over long distances, when our soldiers can level entire city blocks with a single plasma burst. The laughter that erupted from the assembled military leaders echoed off the chamber walls. To them, humanity represented nothing more than another primitive species that had somehow stumbled into space travel before developing proper military technology. Their own forces had crushed civilizations with far more advanced weaponry than anything Earth possessed. General Vortex's tactical advisor, a pale, elongated Etherian named Wisp, materialized beside him in a shimmer of light. "Sir, our analysis indicates that humans have an unusual psychological attachment to individual marksmanship. They appear to value precision over power, stealth over strength. Our behavioral specialists classify this as a primitive hunting instinct that they have failed to evolve beyond." This observation triggered another wave of contemptuous amusement. The Galactic Alliance's military philosophy centered on overwhelming firepower, technological superiority, and the psychological impact of massive displays of force. They had perfected the art of making entire planets surrender before a single shot was fired simply by demonstrating their technological might. "How many of these snipers do they have?" asked Admiral Zephyra, her tone suggesting she was more curious about the absurdity than any potential threat. "Intelligence estimates approximately 50,000 individuals trained in long-range precision shooting across their entire planet," Wisp replied. "By contrast, our invasion force consists of 2 million battle-hardened soldiers equipped with the finest military technology the galaxy has ever produced." The numbers seemed to speak for themselves. The Alliance's force included hover tanks that could fly at hypersonic speeds, personal energy shields that could deflect any known projectile weapon, and orbital bombardment capabilities that could crack continents. Against this, humanity was bringing soldiers with old-fashioned rifles who preferred to fight from hidden positions. General Vortex stood and addressed the assembly. "The humans' reliance on these snipers reveals a fundamental weakness in their military thinking. They have confused hunting small animals with conducting interstellar warfare. Our soldiers wear powered armor that can withstand direct hits from artillery. Our vehicles are shielded against electromagnetic pulses and energy weapons. What possible threat could a single human with a projectile weapon pose to such technology?" The question was rhetorical, but Commander Nexus answered anyway. "None whatsoever, sir. Our armor has been tested against kinetic weapons far more powerful than anything in the human arsenal. Their bullets would bounce off our soldiers like raindrops." As the meeting progressed, the military leaders began discussing the invasion as though it were already complete. They debated how to divide Earth's resources, where to establish their first occupation bases, and how quickly they could begin the process of integrating humanity into the Alliance as a servant species. What none of them understood was that their intelligence reports had captured only the most superficial aspects of human military capability. They had observed human snipers during training exercises and small-scale conflicts, but they had never witnessed what happened when these soldiers faced an existential threat to their entire species. The Alliance's scouts had noted the humans' emphasis on camouflage and concealment, but they interpreted this as cowardice rather than tactical sophistication. They had recorded the ranges at which human snipers could accurately engage targets, but they failed to understand the psychological warfare aspect of precision shooting, or the way a single well-placed shot could paralyze an entire unit with fear. Most critically, the Alliance's advanced sensors and scanning technology, which could easily detect energy weapons and conventional explosives, had been calibrated for the types of warfare they had encountered throughout the galaxy. They had never faced an enemy that specialized in making the impossible shot from an inconceivable distance using weapons that barely registered on their detection systems. General Vortex concluded the briefing with characteristic confidence. "We will begin the invasion at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Our forces will establish beachheads on all major continents simultaneously. The humans will have 12 hours to witness our superior firepower before we offer them one final chance to surrender. When they see our hover tanks and plasma artillery in action, they will abandon any foolish notions about hiding in the wilderness with their primitive weapons." As the assembled officers dispersed to prepare their forces, none of them noticed the subtle energy signature that had been monitoring their meeting from a cloaked human observation satellite positioned just outside the solar system's edge. Earth's military intelligence had been tracking Alliance movements for months, and they had heard every word of the aliens' dismissive assessment. The information was already being transmitted to sniper teams positioned across the globe, and for the first time since the Alliance had issued their ultimatum, the human soldiers were smiling. The enemy was about to learn that there was a vast difference between hunting animals and hunting the most dangerous predator their planet had ever produced. The galaxy's most powerful military force was preparing to invade Earth, confident in their technological superiority and dismissive of human capabilities. They had no idea that they were about to encounter a form of warfare that would challenge everything they thought they knew about combat, precision, and the true meaning of fear. The first wave of Galactic Alliance forces descended from their massive dreadnoughts like falling stars, their drop pods screaming through Earth's atmosphere with the confidence of a military machine that had never known defeat. The pods landed simultaneously across 5 continents, each one disgorging squads of heavily armored alien soldiers who immediately began establishing forward operating bases. Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez lay motionless in her concealed position 3 kilometers from the largest Alliance landing site in the Nevada desert. Through her scope, she watched the aliens emerge from their pods with an almost casual arrogance that made her jaw clench. They moved without the wariness of soldiers entering hostile territory, instead behaving like tourists visiting a particularly unimpressive museum. The alien soldiers were exactly as intelligence had described them. 7-foot-tall Krillians in powered armor that hummed with energy shields, their metallic scales gleaming beneath protective plating that looked capable of stopping conventional artillery. They carried weapons that crackled with contained plasma, and their movements suggested they viewed this mission as little more than a training exercise. Vasquez had been shooting competitively since she was 12 years old, and she had served as a military sniper for 15 years. She had made shots that other soldiers called impossible, in conditions that would challenge the limits of human capability. But she had never attempted what she was about to try now. Her rifle was a custom-built instrument of precision that had been specifically modified for this moment. The barrel was constructed from materials that barely existed outside of theoretical physics papers, and the ammunition had been crafted by engineers who understood that humanity's survival might depend on the perfect marriage of physics and marksmanship. 3 kilometers away, General Vortex stood atop his command vehicle, surveying the landing zone with the satisfaction of a conqueror. His forearms gestured expansively as he issued orders to his subordinates, completely unaware that he was being observed through the most sophisticated optical system Earth had ever produced. Vasquez controlled her breathing, allowing her heart rate to slow until each beat became a metronome for the shot. The wind readings were perfect, the atmospheric conditions optimal. She had calculated the trajectory accounting for Earth's gravity, the Coriolis effect, and even the slight variations in air density caused by the alien ship's energy fields. What the Galactic Alliance had failed to understand was that human snipers were not simply soldiers who shot from long distances. They were masters of applied physics, experts in reading environmental conditions, and practitioners of a form of warfare that required more mathematical precision than most scientists would ever achieve. The trigger broke clean and smooth, and the specially designed projectile began its 3-second journey toward the target. The round had been engineered to penetrate energy shields by exploiting a principle that Alliance scientists had never considered. Their defensive systems were designed to deflect energy weapons and conventional projectiles, but they had never encountered ammunition that could phase shift its molecular structure during flight. General. Vortex's head simply vanished in a spray of green fluid that splattered across his command vehicle's armored hull. The massive alien commander's body stood motionless for a moment, as if uncertain what had happened, before crashing to the ground with a metallic clang that echoed across the landing site. The effect on the Alliance soldiers was immediate and devastating. These warriors had conquered dozens of worlds, faced energy weapons that could melt steel, and fought enemies wielding technology that bordered on magic. But they had never experienced the psychological impact of watching their commander die instantly from an attack they could not see, hear, or comprehend. Vasquez was already moving to her secondary position when the aliens began their frantic search for threats. Their sensors swept the surrounding area with increasing desperation, scanning for energy signatures, heat sources, and electromagnetic anomalies. They found nothing because human snipers had learned to become ghosts, invisible to technology that was designed to detect conventional warfare. Across the globe, similar scenes were unfolding as Earth's most elite marksmen engaged the invasion force. In the Amazon rainforest, Staff Sergeant Michael Chen took down an entire squad of alien soldiers from a position they would never locate. In the Sahara Desert, Corporal Sarah Martinez eliminated Alliance heavy weapons specialists before they could establish their artillery positions. Each shot was a masterpiece of planning and execution. The human snipers had studied the Alliance's equipment, identified weak points in their armor, and developed ammunition specifically designed to exploit those vulnerabilities. More importantly, they had learned to think like hunters facing prey that had never been hunted before. Colonel James Harrison watched the tactical displays in Earth's Combined Military Command Center, located deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The reports coming in from sniper teams around the world painted a picture that seemed almost too good to believe. Alliance forces that had expected to face primitive resistance were instead encountering a form of warfare that their technology and tactics were completely unprepared for. "Sir, we're receiving confirmation from all theaters," reported Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Wong, her voice carrying a note of amazement. "Target elimination rates are exceeding our most optimistic projections. Alliance forces are showing signs of confusion and panic. The aliens' advanced sensors could detect a plasma rifle being charged from orbit, but they could not locate a human sniper who had spent years learning to become one with the environment. Their tactical doctrine assumed that enemies would reveal themselves through energy signatures or electronic emissions, not through the nearly silent crack of a kinetic projectile traveling faster than sound. On the Nevada battlefield, the surviving Alliance soldiers had formed a defensive perimeter around their landing site, but they were defending against an enemy they could not see or understand. Their return fire was ineffective because they had no targets to shoot at. Every time one of their officers attempted to establish order or coordinate a response, another impossible shot would eliminate them from a distance that their own weapons could not match. Commander Nexus, now the senior officer in the Nevada sector after his general's death, frantically tried to contact the orbital fleet. "Command, we are under attack by unknown weapons systems. Request immediate orbital bombardment of grid coordinates." His transmission ended abruptly as Sergeant Rodriguez's bullet found the vulnerable joint between his helmet and chest armor. The Alliance's communication network, dependent on officers who had never learned to delegate authority to lower ranks, began to collapse as the command structure was systematically dismantled by shooters they could not locate or retaliate against. What the Galactic Alliance was experiencing for the first time in their military history was the terror of facing an invisible enemy. Their soldiers, trained to fight in conventional battles with clear lines of engagement, found themselves paralyzed by an attack method that violated every principle of warfare they understood. The human snipers were not just eliminating targets. They were conducting a psychological warfare campaign that struck at the very foundation of the Alliance's military confidence. Each impossible shot served as a message that their technology was not invincible, Their armor was not impenetrable, and their superiority was an illusion. By the end of the first day, Alliance landing forces across Earth had suffered casualties that exceeded their losses in any previous campaign. More importantly, they had lost something that no amount of technology could replace: their certainty that victory was inevitable. Admiral Zephyra stared at the casualty reports with disbelief that bordered on horror. In 48 hours, the Galactic Alliance had lost more senior officers than they had in the previous decade of conquest. The holographic displays showed red indicators scattered across Earth's surface, each one representing a confirmed kill by an enemy that their forces could not even detect. "This is impossible," she muttered, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with agitation. "Our soldiers are equipped with the most advanced sensor arrays in the galaxy. How can these humans simply vanish after taking their shots?" The answer came from Dr. Zilkin, the Alliance's chief xenobiologist who had been studying human combat footage with growing alarm. "Admiral, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of human warfare. These snipers are not using advanced technology to hide from our sensors. They are using something far more dangerous: evolved hunting instincts combined with mathematical precision." The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Alliance had built their military superiority on the assumption that advanced technology would always triumph over primitive tactics. They had never encountered a species that could turn their own evolutionary adaptations into weapons of war. On Earth, Master Sergeant Vasquez had relocated to a position overlooking the Alliance's main supply depot in Arizona. The aliens had learned enough to post guards around their installations, but their defensive thinking was still rooted in conventional warfare. They watched for energy signatures and metal detectors while Vasquez lay motionless in a ghillie suit that made her indistinguishable from the desert scrub. Through her scope, she observed the Alliance soldiers with the detached analysis of a predator studying prey. Their movements had become erratic and nervous, lacking the confidence they had displayed during the initial landing. Every few minutes, one of them would spin around to scan the horizon for threats that might or might not exist. The psychological effect was exactly what human military planners had hoped for. The Alliance forces were no longer thinking like conquerors. They were behaving like prey animals that knew they were being hunted. Their advanced technology had become a liability because they relied on it to provide security that it could not deliver. Vasquez selected her target carefully: a Krillian engineer who was attempting to repair damaged communication equipment. The shot would serve multiple purposes, eliminating a valuable technical specialist while demonstrating that even soldiers performing support duties were not safe from human marksmen. The engineering bay was located in the center of the Alliance compound, surrounded by multiple layers of security. The alien engineer worked under the protection of energy shields and defensive sensors, confident that no enemy could possibly threaten him at such a distance and through such elaborate defenses. Vasquez's bullet traveled through the desert air with ballistic precision that represented the culmination of human understanding of physics and marksmanship. The specially designed round penetrated the energy shield by exploiting quantum mechanical principles that Alliance technology had never been designed to counter. The engineer's death sent shockwaves through the Alliance command structure that went far beyond the loss of a single specialist. The kill demonstrated that nowhere in their fortified positions was truly safe, that human snipers could reach any target they chose, regardless of the defensive measures in place. Similar scenes played out across the globe as Earth's sniper teams systematically dismantled the Alliance invasion force. In the mountains of Afghanistan, Sergeant Thompson eliminated a squad of alien scouts who thought they were conducting reconnaissance from an unassailable position. In the forest of Canada, Corporal Williams picked off Alliance soldiers one by one, forcing the survivors to abandon their advance and retreat to defensive positions. The human snipers were not randomly targeting enemy soldiers. Each shot was part of a carefully coordinated campaign designed to maximize psychological impact while degrading the Alliance's operational capabilities. Priority targets included officers, communication specialists, heavy weapons operators, and anyone attempting to establish leadership or coordination. Colonel Harrison studied the global tactical situation with satisfaction that he was careful not to express too openly. The reports from every theater confirmed that human forces were achieving objectives that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. The Alliance's technological advantages were proving irrelevant against an enemy that specialized in making the impossible shot from inconceivable distances. The aliens are starting to adapt their tactics, reported Major Stevens, the intelligence liaison. They're keeping their officers in armored vehicles and limiting exposure during daylight hours. Some units have begun moving only at night. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what we want them to do. Every adaptation they make to counter our snipers is a departure from their standard operating procedures. We're forcing them to fight our kind of war instead of their own. This was the crucial element that the Alliance had failed to understand about human military doctrine. The snipers were not intended to defeat the invasion force through direct confrontation. Their purpose was to disrupt Alliance operations so thoroughly that the technologically superior force would be reduced to fighting on humanity's terms. Night operations presented their own challenges, but human snipers had been training for low-light engagements for years. Their scopes incorporated technologies that allowed them to see clearly in conditions where Alliance soldiers struggled to identify targets. More importantly, the aliens' defensive measures became even less effective in darkness, when their energy shields created distinctive signatures that made them easier to target, rather than harder. Sergeant First Class Rebecca Torres demonstrated this advantage during a night engagement in the hills outside Los Angeles. The Alliance patrol she was tracking had modified their equipment to reduce electromagnetic emissions, but their energy shields still created subtle distortions in the infrared spectrum that were invisible to their own sensors. Torres had positioned herself on a ridge that provided overlapping fields of fire across 3 separate valleys. When the alien patrol entered her kill zone, she engaged them with the methodical precision that had made human snipers legendary. Each shot eliminated a specific target according to a predetermined plan that accounted for the patrol's likely reactions and movement patterns. The surviving aliens found themselves trapped in terrain that offered no cover from an enemy they could not locate. Their advanced weapons were useless because they had no targets to engage. Their communication equipment could not call for support because Torres had eliminated their communications specialist with her first shot. The psychological impact of such engagements spread throughout the Alliance forces like a virus. Soldiers who had never experienced fear in combat began requesting transfer to different theaters. Units that had operated with mechanical efficiency started making mistakes born of paranoia and stress. Admiral Zephyra received reports of Alliance soldiers refusing direct orders, abandoning their positions and in some cases firing wildly at shadows they thought might conceal human snipers. The disciplined military machine that had conquered half the galaxy was showing signs of breakdown in the face of an enemy they could not see, predict, or counter. We need to reconsider our approach, Dr. Zilkin advised during the daily briefing. Our current tactics assume that superior firepower and technology will prevail. But humans have evolved specifically to hunt prey that is larger, stronger, and faster than themselves. They are turning our own advantages against us. The realization was spreading through the Alliance command structure that they were not fighting a conventional military force. They were being hunted by a species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of killing dangerous prey with tools and tactics that seemed primitive but were actually the product of evolution's most sophisticated predator. Supreme Commander Thalax materialized in the Alliance war room through quantum teleportation, his arrival announced by the distinctive shimmer of displaced space-time. As the highest-ranking military officer in the Galactic Alliance, his presence indicated that the situation on Earth had escalated beyond what anyone had anticipated. Explain to me how a species that barely mastered interplanetary travel has managed to inflict casualties that exceed our losses in the Centauri campaign, Thalax demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally overseen the conquest of 43 worlds. Admiral Zephyra activated the holographic display showing Earth's current tactical situation. The planet's surface was marked with thousands of red indicators, each representing an Alliance casualty attributed to sniper fire. The pattern was unlike anything in their military databases. No front lines, no major engagements. Just a steady stream of impossible kills that defied every principle of modern warfare. Sir, our forces are facing an enemy that operates outside conventional tactical parameters, she began carefully. Human snipers have eliminated approximately 15,000 Alliance personnel in the past week, including 237 officers above the rank of squad leader. The numbers were staggering, but what made them truly alarming was their precision. The humans were not conducting random attacks. They were systematically destroying the Alliance's command structure with surgical accuracy that suggested an understanding of military organization that bordered on the prophetic. Thalix studied the casualty reports with growing disbelief. How is this possible? Our soldiers wear armor that can withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Their energy shields can deflect projectiles traveling at hypersonic velocities. Dr. Zilkin stepped forward, his usually confident demeanor replaced by something approaching academic humility. Commander, we have discovered that human weapons technology is far more sophisticated than our initial assessments indicated. They have developed projectiles that can penetrate our defenses by exploiting quantum mechanical properties that our shielding was never designed to counter. This revelation struck at the heart of the Alliance's military confidence. Their technology was based on principles that had proven effective against every enemy they had encountered. The idea that a primitive species could develop countermeasures was almost incomprehensible. On Earth, Staff Sergeant David Kim was demonstrating exactly how incomprehensible human ingenuity could be. Positioned in the ruins of downtown Detroit, he had spent 3 days studying the movement patterns of an Alliance mechanized unit that had established a forward operating base in the abandoned automotive plants. The aliens had chosen their position well from a conventional military perspective. The facility was surrounded by open ground that would expose any approaching infantry, and their sensors provided overlapping coverage that should have detected any enemy activity within a 5-kilometer radius. Kim had bypassed these defenses by using urban infrastructure that the aliens did not fully understand. The storm drainage system that connected the factory complex to the rest of the city had been built to handle massive water flows, creating tunnels large enough for human movement that registered as natural. Geological features on Alliance sensors. His target was not the base itself, but the specialized equipment that allowed the aliens to communicate with their orbital fleet. Kim had identified the quantum communication array through careful observation, noting the distinctive energy patterns it created and the way Alliance personnel treated it with particular caution. The shot required Kim to fire through a narrow window in an abandoned office building, across 800 meters of urban terrain, and through a gap in the Alliance's defensive perimeter that existed for exactly 43 seconds during each guard rotation. The projectile would need to penetrate the communication array's housing and strike a component no larger than a human fist. Kim's bullet completed its journey with the mathematical precision that defined human marksmanship at its highest level. The quantum communication array exploded in a shower of exotic particles that temporarily disrupted every piece of Alliance technology within a 100-meter radius. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Alliance unit lost contact with orbital support, their defensive sensors went offline, and their vehicle's navigation systems began displaying error messages in languages that their universal translators could not process. Similar attacks were occurring simultaneously across the globe as human snipers targeted the technological infrastructure that the Alliance depended on. Communication arrays, sensor networks, and command vehicles were eliminated with precision that left Alliance engineers struggling to understand how their equipment could be so vulnerable to kinetic weapons. In the Swiss Command Center, Colonel Harrison monitored the global situation with careful satisfaction. The Alliance forces were adapting to human tactics, but every adaptation revealed new vulnerabilities that his snipers could exploit. The technologically superior enemy was being forced to fight a war of improvisation and uncertainty, conditions where human creativity and adaptability provided decisive advantages. Sir, intelligence reports that Alliance forces are beginning to withdraw from forward positions, Major Stevens reported. Several units have pulled back to more defensible locations, and orbital surveillance shows increased traffic between the surface and the fleet. This was exactly the outcome that human military planners had hoped for. By making forward deployment too costly to maintain, the snipers were forcing the Alliance to adopt defensive postures that negated their technological advantages. An enemy that excelled at rapid assault and overwhelming firepower was being compelled to fight from static positions. The psychological warfare component of the campaign was proving even more effective than the physical destruction. Alliance soldiers who had never experienced doubt in their military superiority were now questioning whether their technology could protect them from an enemy they could not see or predict. Master Sergeant Vasquez observed this psychological deterioration firsthand as she watched Alliance patrols in the New Mexico desert. The alien soldiers moved with constant vigilance that bordered on paranoia, frequently stopping to scan empty terrain where they thought they might have detected threats. Their formation discipline had degraded as soldiers unconsciously sought cover that did not exist in the open desert. The Alliance's tactical doctrine assumed that superior sensors and communication technology would provide situational awareness that made ambush tactics ineffective. But human snipers operated beyond the range of most sensors, used camouflage that did not register as artificial, and struck so quickly that communication was irrelevant. Vasquez selected her next target with the clinical detachment of a surgeon, an Alliance squad leader who was attempting to maintain unit cohesion through force of personality. The officer's death would serve multiple purposes, eliminating leadership while demonstrating to the surviving soldiers that rank and experience provided no protection against human marksmanship. The shot was taken from a position that should have been impossible to reach without detection, across terrain that appeared to offer no concealment, at a range that exceeded the theoretical limits of kinetic weapons. The Alliance squad leader simply ceased to exist, his body armor and energy shields proving as ineffective as tissue paper against a projectile that had been designed specifically to defeat their technology. Supreme, Commander Thalax watched these reports accumulate with growing alarm. The Alliance military had conquered civilizations with technology that surpassed their current enemies, but they had never faced an opponent that could turn their own advantages against them so systematically. "We need to consider orbital bombardment," he announced finally. "If we cannot locate these snipers through conventional means, we will eliminate the terrain they use for concealment." The suggestion hung in the air like an admission of defeat. Orbital bombardment would destroy the very resources the Alliance had come to claim, turning a conquest into an act of spite that would benefit no one. The orbital bombardment began at precisely 0600 hours Galactic Standard Time, as the Alliance fleet unleashed enough firepower to crack continents against carefully selected targets across Earth's surface. The energy beams carved through the atmosphere like pillars of destructive light, turning mountains into glass and forests into ash. Supreme Commander Thalax watched the bombardment from the bridge of his flagship, convinced that no enemy could survive such overwhelming force. The display screens showed secondary explosions as human military installations were vaporized, followed by the characteristic thermal blooms that indicated complete target destruction. "That should eliminate their sniper nests," Admiral Zephyra observed with satisfaction. "No amount of camouflage or concealment can protect them from orbital plasma cannons." The bombardment continued for 6 hours, systematically targeting every location where Alliance forces had taken sniper fire. The Alliance's tactical computers calculated that they had delivered enough concentrated energy to sterilize any area where human marksmen might have been positioned. What they had not calculated was humanity's ability to anticipate exactly this response. Colonel Harrison watched the bombardment from his command center deep beneath the Swiss Alps, studying the targeting patterns with professional interest rather than alarm. "They're hitting our decoy positions perfectly," he reported to the Joint Chiefs. "Every fake sniper nest we prepared is being eliminated exactly as predicted. Estimated time until they realize they're shooting at empty terrain?" The answer came sooner than expected. Within hours of the bombardment's conclusion, Alliance ground forces began reporting new sniper attacks from positions that should have been reduced to radioactive craters. The impossible shots continued with the same precision and psychological impact that had characterized the entire campaign. Staff Sergeant Martinez was demonstrating exactly how the Alliance had been outmaneuvered. Her position in the Colorado Rockies had never been targeted for bombardment because it had never been used during the initial phase of operations. Human military planners had prepared secondary and tertiary positions for every sniper team, understanding that the Alliance would eventually resort to orbital bombardment. Through her scope, Martinez watched Alliance soldiers emerge from their bunkers with the cautious movements of people who thought they had achieved victory. The aliens had modified their tactics based on lessons learned during the first week of fighting, but they still moved with the fundamental assumption that their technology provided adequate protection. Martinez had spent the bombardment studying Alliance movement patterns and equipment modifications. The aliens had added additional sensor arrays to their vehicles and increased the frequency of their communication checks. Most importantly, they had begun clustering around their command vehicles in formations that prioritized protection over mobility. This behavioral change provided opportunities that Martinez exploited with ruthless efficiency. Her first shot eliminated the communication specialist who had been coordinating the unit's movement, instantly disrupting their ability to call for support or report the attack. Her second shot disabled the sensor array that had been scanning for human activity. The surviving Alliance soldiers found themselves in the exact situation their bombardment had been designed to prevent, under attack by an invisible enemy who could strike with impunity while remaining completely undetectable. The psychological impact was magnified by the realization that their most powerful weapons had been useless. The Alliance military's ultimate expression of technological superiority had accomplished nothing except destroying empty terrain, while the real enemy remained untouched and deadly. Across Earth, human sniper teams emerged from concealed positions that had been prepared months in advance. The orbital bombardment had revealed the Alliance's targeting priorities and response patterns, while eliminating exactly none of the actual threats. Every shot fired from orbit had been a waste of energy that accomplished nothing except demonstrating the limits of technological solutions to human problems. Dr. Zilkin presented his analysis to the increasingly desperate Alliance command staff, with the demeanor of a scientist delivering particularly unwelcome news. "Commanders, we have been engaging in warfare with a species that plans operations across time frames we had not considered. The humans anticipated our response to their sniper attacks and prepared countermeasures before launching their initial assault." This revelation struck at the heart of the Alliance's strategic thinking. Their military doctrine assumed that superior technology would provide tactical advantages that could overcome any enemy planning. The idea that primitive humans could outthink their sophisticated command structure was almost impossible to accept. The evidence, however, was undeniable. Human snipers were operating from positions that had been prepared specifically to survive orbital bombardment. Their communication networks used technologies that Alliance sensors could not detect or disrupt. Most alarmingly, they seemed to understand Alliance tactics better than the Alliance understood their own vulnerabilities. Master Sergeant Vasquez exemplified this understanding as she engaged Alliance forces in the ruins of Las Vegas. The city had been partially destroyed by the bombardment, but the devastation had created new concealment opportunities rather than eliminating existing ones. Vasquez used the altered terrain to establish firing positions that provided overlapping fields of fire across multiple approach routes. The Alliance unit attempting to secure the city had learned to expect sniper attacks, but they had not learned to effectively counter them. Their movement patterns had become predictable as they attempted to minimize exposure while maintaining operational effectiveness. Vasquez exploited these patterns with the patience of a predator that had spent lifetimes perfecting the art of the hunt. Her shots were timed to maximize disruption rather than simply eliminate targets. Each kill was calculated to force the surviving Alliance soldiers into positions where they would be more vulnerable to subsequent attacks. The aliens advanced. Technology became a liability because it encouraged tactical thinking that assumed sensors and shields would provide adequate protection. Supreme Commander Thalax received updates from the battlefield with growing disbelief. The orbital bombardment that should have ended human resistance had instead revealed the depth of human preparation and the sophistication of their tactical planning. Alliance forces were reporting that sniper attacks had actually intensified following the bombardment, with human marksmen operating from positions that had somehow survived direct hits from orbital plasma cannons. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his composure finally showing cracks. "We delivered enough energy to vaporize entire cities. No conventional fortification could survive such concentrated firepower." The answer lay in human engineering that the Alliance had never encountered. Earth's military had spent months preparing positions using techniques that combined advanced material science with principles borrowed from quantum physics. The sniper nests were not conventional bunkers, but rather spatial distortions that existed partially outside normal three-dimensional space. Alliance sensors detected these positions as empty terrain because they were scanning normal space, while the actual fortifications existed in dimensional pockets that overlapped with reality only when the snipers needed to take their shots. The bombardment had destroyed the visible terrain while leaving the actual positions completely untouched. Colonel Harrison monitored the global situation with quiet satisfaction. The Alliance's resort to orbital bombardment had marked their transition from confident conquerors to desperate enemies who were running out of options. Every escalation they attempted was met by human countermeasures that had been planned months or even years in advance. Phase 2 is proceeding exactly as projected, he reported to the Joint Chiefs. Alliance forces are showing signs of severe morale degradation. We're receiving reports of units refusing orders and individual soldiers abandoning their positions. This represented the ultimate objective of the sniper campaign. By demonstrating that Alliance technology could not protect them from human marksmanship, the attacks had undermined the psychological foundation of their military effectiveness. Soldiers who had never questioned their superiority were now paralyzed by fear of an enemy they could not see, predict, or counter. The final collapse of the Galactic Alliance invasion began not with a massive battle, but with a single shot fired from an impossible distance under conditions that defied every principle of military science. Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez had positioned herself on a mountaintop in Tibet, nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, preparing to attempt what human military planners called the demonstration. Through her scope, she could see the Alliance's primary command ship hovering in the upper atmosphere, its shields glowing with contained energy that could deflect attacks from entire fleets. The vessel represented the ultimate expression of Galactic Alliance technology, an mobile fortress that had supervised the conquest of dozens of worlds and had never been successfully attacked by surface forces. Vasquez's target was not the ship itself, but Supreme Commander Thalax, who had made the fatal error of exposing himself on the observation deck to personally direct the final assault on human positions. The alien commander stood behind energy barriers that Alliance engineers claimed could stop anything short of a direct hit from a stellar-class weapon. The shot would require Vasquez to fire through Earth's atmosphere, across nearly 30 kilometers of three-dimensional space, and through energy fields that distorted both space and time. The projectile would need to maintain ballistic stability, while its molecular structure was altered by quantum fluctuations that existed only in theoretical physics papers. Vasquez had been preparing for this moment for 6 months, studying atmospheric conditions, calculating gravitational effects, and working with Earth's most advanced physicists to develop ammunition that could accomplish the impossible. The bullet loaded in her rifle represented the culmination of human understanding of physics, chemistry, and the mathematical principles that governed long-range precision shooting. She fired at precisely 14:32:07 local time, the moment when atmospheric conditions aligned with stellar positioning to create a brief window of ballistic possibility. The projectile began its journey with a muzzle velocity that exceeded the theoretical limits of chemical propulsion, accelerated by experimental technologies that existed nowhere else in human space. 37 seconds later, Supreme Commander Thalax ceased to exist as a living being. The Alliance's most senior military officer simply vanished in a spray of alien blood that splattered across the observation deck of his supposedly impregnable command ship. The energy barriers that should have protected him flickered and died, overloaded by energies they had never been designed to encounter. The effect on Alliance morale was immediate and catastrophic. The death of their supreme commander from a surface attack that their technology claimed was impossible shattered the last remnants of their confidence in their military superiority. The psychological warfare that had begun with precision elimination of junior officers had culminated in the most devastating demonstration possible. No one was safe from human marksmanship. Admiral Zafira assumed command of the Alliance forces with the grim understanding that she was inheriting an impossible situation. The invasion force that had arrived at Earth expecting easy conquest was now trapped on a planet where invisible enemies could eliminate any target they chose from distances that exceeded the range of Alliance weapons. Casualties now exceed 40% of our ground forces, she reported to the Galactic Council during an emergency session. We have lost 68% of our command structure, including Supreme Commander Thalax. Human resistance continues to operate from positions we cannot locate using any available technology. The numbers represented more than simple military losses. They indicated the complete failure of the Alliance's strategic assumptions about technological warfare. A civilization that had conquered half the galaxy through superior firepower and advanced tactics had been systematically dismantled by marksmen using principles that should have been obsolete. On Earth, Colonel Harrison prepared to implement the final phase of humanity's defense plan. The sniper campaign had achieved its primary objective of degrading Alliance combat effectiveness, but the ultimate goal was to force a complete withdrawal without requiring a conventional battle that humans could not win. Initiate Protocol 7, he ordered, activating a communication system that had been specifically designed to penetrate Alliance encryption. The message that followed would be transmitted directly to every alien soldier on Earth, bypassing their command structure and speaking to them as individuals who were beginning to question their chances of survival. The broadcast began with tactical displays showing the precise locations of every Alliance unit on Earth, information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. It continued with detailed analyses of Alliance vulnerabilities, demonstrated through slow-motion footage of sniper shots penetrating their most advanced defenses. Finally, it offered something that no Alliance soldier had expected to hear: terms for honorable withdrawal. Soldiers of the Galactic Alliance. Colonel Harrison's voice echoed across every Alliance communication channel simultaneously. Your invasion force has been defeated not by superior technology, but by human determination and tactical adaptability. You have experienced warfare with a species that has spent millions of years perfecting the art of precision hunting. The message continued with clinical documentation of Alliance losses and the methods by which they had been inflicted. Human military analysts had prepared detailed explanations of every tactical innovation, every technological breakthrough, and every strategic decision that had led to the invasion's failure. We offer you the opportunity to withdraw with honor, Harrison concluded. Your ships will not be fired upon. Your personnel will be allowed to depart without further casualties. The alternative is continued prosecution of a war you cannot win against an enemy you cannot see. The response was not immediate, but it was inevitable. Alliance units across Earth began requesting permission to withdraw to orbital positions. Individual soldiers abandoned their posts and reported to evacuation points that human forces had helpfully identified. The disciplined military machine that had conquered dozens of worlds dissolved into a collection of demoralized individuals who had lost faith in their own invincibility. Admiral Zephyra faced the most difficult decision in Alliance military history. She could continue the invasion with forces that were psychologically broken and tactically ineffective, or she could accept defeat at the hands of a species that galactic civilization had dismissed as primitive hunters. The evacuation began at dawn, with Alliance transport ships descending to collect their defeated forces. Human sniper teams maintained overwatch during the withdrawal, their continued presence serving as a reminder that the aliens' departure was occurring under human terms rather than their own choice. Master Sergeant Vasquez watched the final Alliance shuttle depart from the Nevada landing site where the invasion had begun. The aliens moved with the subdued efficiency of soldiers who had learned hard lessons about the limits of technological superiority. Their equipment remained impressive, their weapons still devastating in conventional warfare, but none of it had proven effective against human ingenuity applied with lethal precision. The Galactic Alliance fleet departed Earth's solar system 72 hours after the death of Supreme Commander Thalax, carrying with them the understanding that humanity represented something unique in galactic civilization. Earth's defenders had demonstrated that technological advancement was meaningless without the tactical adaptability and creative thinking that marked truly dangerous opponents. In the weeks that followed, reports reached Earth of profound changes in Alliance military doctrine. The organization that had built its power on assumptions of technological superiority was restructuring its forces to counter tactics they had never previously encountered. Alliance military academies began teaching courses on human warfare principles, and their equipment manufacturers started developing countermeasures for weapons that barely registered on their most sophisticated sensors. Colonel, Harrison reviewed the final casualty reports with quiet satisfaction. Earth sniper teams had eliminated over 20,000 Alliance personnel, while suffering fewer than 50 casualties themselves. More importantly, they had established humanity's reputation as a species that would never accept conquest. Regardless of the technological disadvantages, they faced the invasion that was supposed to demonstrate galactic superiority had instead proven that the most dangerous weapon in the universe was not advanced technology, but the human ability to adapt, improvise, and make the impossible shot when survival demanded it. The galaxy had learned to respect a species that could turn hunting skills developed over millions of years into a form of warfare that rendered technological advantages irrelevant. Earth remained free, defended by marksmen who had proven that precision, patience, and human ingenuity could triumph over any enemy. No matter how advanced their technology or overwhelming their apparent superiority,